Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. And today I'm going to talk about the first player to challenge the reserve clause, really to become a free agent in Major League Baseball. And many people think it was Curt Flood, but really it was Armando Marsans. And Armando Marsans was the first guy to challenge Major League Baseball and fight for his freedom in the league. And this is his card from the Federal League. In 1915, he was forced to go to the Federal League because he sued the Cincinnati Reds because he wanted to be able to be a free agent and move from team to team. And so they kind of banned him from baseball for a while. And just some things, it says he was among the baseball's top stars before his career was derailed by the attempt to challenge the reserve clause. Marsans was known for aggressive base running and was often praised for stretching singles into doubles and doubles into triple. One writer wrote, "There is not a more intelligent player in the game than Marsans, who seems to have an uncanny knack of knowing what to do and when to do it." Marsans started in Cuba. He's a Cuban player. And this is his 1909 Cabanas card. I've shown all this before, but I want to talk a little bit more about him because he came from a well-to-do family, and he came to the United States to study here and study in college. And Marsans became very, very well-versed and very, he learned English, and he was able to read and write English and learned the law here in the United States. So in 1909, he was recruited along with Rafael Almeida to go play with the Cincinnati team, with the Cincinnati the Reds, the Cincinnati Nationals, I guess is what it was called back in those days. And I'll give you a good look at him here from his Cabanas card or Cabañas card. And these are tobacco cards from 1909, printed in Cuba, made in Cuba. And you can see that they are, from cigarette cards. And it talks a little bit about how to get these cards, and says a collection of some of the best players in Cuba and from the United States, because many teams went to play in Cuba in the winter leagues. And in 1909, Detroit Tigers went out there to play, and also in 1910. So cards were produced of the Cuban players and also of the American players that went. Now, in 1909, Ty Cobb didn't go, but he did go in 1910. So there are some Cuban cards of 1910, which are the Punch Cigarros card of Ty Cobb. So this is Armando Marsans in the Cincinnati team in 1913 and 1913 Fatima cards. Excuse me, my voice here. So what ended up happening is he signed with the Reds, and he played with the Reds, and his first full season he batted .317 with 35 stolen bases and ranked in the National League's top 10. And despite having numerous injuries, he increased his stolen base totals to 37 while batting .297 in the league, which was 35 points above the league average. And, he was known to be a superior outfield defenseman and aggressive base runner. And, they said, of course, that there was no more intelligent player in the game at that time than Marsans, because it says he had an uncanny knack of knowing what to do and when to do it. He made a strong impression on his first major league manager, Clark Griffith, and who left after the 1911 season and to take over the Washington Senators. In the spring of 1912, Griffith offered the Reds $5,000 for Marsans, but was refused. And, Marsans continued to play over there, and with the with the Cincinnati team, and and so Marsans, was Herzog called him a very classy outfielder, and what ended up happening was that Marsans then went to play for the new manager, Buck Herzog, and Herzog accused Marsans of suffering an injury, and because he was injured, and Herzog said that no, he wasn't that injured, so he suspended Marsans, who then he demanded a trade. So Marsans demanded a trade because he just didn't get along with Herzog, and Herzog called him a liar because they said he was injured, and he was injured. So here's Marsans. You can see he's the third here. That's Armando Marsans here. I'll give you a good look at Marsans. That's Marsans right there with Cincinnati. You can see there, he's the third one there on that line. And the other player that's on here also is Almeida. And there's Almeida right over here, who was the other Cuban teammate that played with Marsans. And you can see here, his name is down here, Almeida. So this was the 1913 Fatima card of Cincinnati. So what ended up happening was that Marsans wanted to be traded, but again, during those days, you couldn't just, decide on what you wanted to do. So Marsans decided that he, was going to leave. So after being wined and dined by a few teams, Marsans decided to sign with the Federal League and decided to sue the Major League Baseball for his free agency. So he couldn't play in the major leagues, but he did move on to play in the Federal League. And you can see this is the card when he played for St. Louis of the Federal League, because the Federal League, Marsans was offered a $21,000 contract by the Federal, which he accepted. And after giving the Reds 10-day notice, which required before terminating a contract, Cincinnati immediately filed a lawsuit in federal court because Marsans was not a U.S. citizen, and they claimed that its property had been jeopardized. They said, Marsans was their property, and they didn't want him to leave. They didn't want him to go play. But Marsans was very, very stubborn. And since he knew English and he knew the law, he decided that he was going to go ahead and sue the league. So the league essentially kind of banned him for a while, and he was unable to play, in the major leagues until the two sides battled it out in court. So, excuse me. So Marsans actually returned to Havana, and he spent some days playing over there for a while. And, then again, they fought in court for a little while. And, it was one of those situations that it took a couple of years for it to be settled. And then finally, after the lawsuit was settled, they decided to allow him to continue to play with the Federal League. And then finally, the Marsans was allowed, the district court or the legal court decided that yes, he could return to the major leagues, that he was not the property of the Cincinnati Reds. But the legal battles unfortunately kind of ruined his career, and then the Federal League actually folded, and his contract was assigned to the St. Louis Browns. But after being out of the majors for a couple of years, because he had to go play in Cuba, kind of banned from the league, his performance kind of dwindled a little bit there. So the Browns ended up trading him to the Yankees. So this is the last year that he did ended up playing with the Reds. Here he is in the 1916 M101. And again, after 1915, Cincinnati, got him back, played with the Reds, but he was injured, and what ended up happening was that finally he was able to go on to the team that he wanted, so he went on to play with the Yankees. But Marsans at that point had been injury prone, and soon after reporting to the Yankees, he suffered a broken leg, and the broken leg, kind of ruined his career. So, he played with the Yankees for a couple of years, and then in 1918, at age 30, he decided, he finally gave one more try with the Yankees, but he only batted .236, and what turned out to be his final major league season. And so Marsans, overall, all the times that he did play in the Cuban Winter League, he played in 10 pennant-winning teams, and he played in 21 seasons in the Winter League. He only was able to play about, looks like 8 years overall in the majors and here in the Federal League. But he was one of the great hitters in Cuba. And in 1913, he did win a batting title in Cuba with a .400 average. And overall, he became, one of the first 10 men inducted into the Cuban Hall of Fame. And, he's remembered today in Cuba and remembered as really the first player to challenge the reserve clause in baseball and ended up winning and ended up playing, with the Reds, with the St. Louis team, the St. Louis Federals, and in Cuba. And at the end of his career, he was able to play with the Yankees under Miller Huggins. And so Miller Huggins ended up bringing him in on the Yankees. And unfortunately, the first year he broke his leg with the Yankees, so he didn't really get an opportunity to do a lot of playing time with them. So overall in his career, he ended up with a .269 batting average, and wasn't again one of the top players in the league, but he was known for one of these guys that challenged the league and was the first one to actually sue the league for the reserve clause, and ended up winning and being able to come back. And since he was a Cuban-born player, not an American-born player, he was allowed almost to be a kind of like a free agent. And so that's kind of the history of Armando Marsans. Many people don't know about him. Many people don't know that he was the first one to actually win the lawsuit, and he set up the, what was to follow eventually when Curt Flood ended up suing the league, and also was banned from the league for a while, just like Marsans was for a couple of years there. So that's a story of one of the Cuban Hall of Famers who came to the United States and was able to, set some history. And he was the first guy to sue the Major League Baseball for the reserve clause and win, and was able to play for, not just the Reds, but he moved on to the Federal League, and later on he played with the Yankees for the last 2 years of his career. So wanted to share that story with you guys in case you didn't know. So thanks a lot, guys, for watching my videos. Truly, truly appreciate it. Have an awesome, awesome day. It's Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and I'll catch you on the next one.